everybody. Welcome to the panel discussion called Who is Afraid of Gender? My name is Kalia Dimitrova, and I will be leading you in this little discussion. And I'm actually very honored and pleased to share this stage, this very high stage, with three women that I deeply admire and look up to. And on my right is Nina, also known as Misli Kritički, that is leading the platform which is called Misli Kritički. I'm sure you're all aware of it. Next is Iva, the founder of Tampon Zona, the regional, well, I'm not sure if I can say regional podcast, but I kind of like, I don't know, I see her work as very regional, both Nina and Iva. And Rumena Bužarovska is a very well-known and awarded author, but here is also joining us as one of the three women that lead the podcast Radio Mileva. Hi, everyone. And I am the founder and editor of the feminist platform Meduza. I feel like this is like a strange time slot for such an intense topic, but no rest for the wicked. And they put the feminists at the end of the day. But let's focus on the topic at hand. Okay, so basically the title of this panel, I'm sure, is referring to the book Who is Afraid of Gender, which is written by Judith Butler, and it's mainly dealing with the, let's say, development of the anti-gender movement. I'm not sure how interested you are or how aware you are of the development of this movement and what are the political, let's say, realities and complexities of this now reality of this region, but also global one. So just as a very short introduction before we focus the conversation more of the work of all of my panelists, I would just briefly introduce the topic. Basically, when we speak of the anti-gender movement, we speak of anti-gender actors, which kind of like have differences depending on whether we analyze them like from a historical point of view or geographical point of view. But more or less, there are some points that connect them, and they are very concrete in that sense. Basically, it's the combination they're doing of very broad discourses into one big threat. And that threat is seen as opposed to one of the, or all of them, the three N's, they're called. Nation, nature, or normality. And basically they're using gender as the thing that is made to kind of like, I don't know, destroy one or two or three of these ends. And they have quite conveniently constructed this thing called gender ideology, which basically, let's say, kind of like constructs the reality that there are some radical feminists or an LGBTI lobby that is controlling the global politics and is trying to destroy the natural order of things. So they're also kind of like presenting the concept of gender as anti-scientific and against biology or against common sense, as well as opposed to tradition or religion. So due to this, they have managed to build throughout the years very wide coalitions between the church, very far-right state actors, specific media, and they have also managed to kind of like use funds very in a very smart way that is not the case with CSOs that are mostly working on the other side with human rights, etc., which are working in a much more transparent way. And they have been very successful in this mission and are very successful in this region, mainly due to the also kind of like using this concept of the quiet majority. So basically appealing to the emotions of common people that are, let's say, in the very broad sense, disappointed by neoliberal democracy and are kind of like using very small minorities such as the trans community as scapegoats and kind of like actors that are dismantling, as I said, the natural order of things. And this has been very successful in the region and in the post-socialist context. But also when we analyze the anti-gender movement globally, you can see that it's always these topics that connects them. So basically creating moral panic with certain people, actors, let's say feminists or LGBTI people or certain CSOs that work with human rights that are presented as the global elite, when in fact they are most of the times marginalized in their communities by the state, by the laws, by the order of things. And they have been very, very, very fast in their, let's say, development. So basically in one decade they have made gender as something that was really as a concept or as a term used mostly in an academic sense to something that is very popular, and now you can hear it like random people or teenagers discussing gender, but kind of like adopting these narratives which are based on moral panic or fake news, etc. And that leaves us to the current state of things where they have actually even penetrated formal politics. In North Macedonia, they have managed to change certain laws or stop the adoption of others. They have a very important influence in the formal educational system. And yeah, this is the political situation of the moment. I think that this is very interesting. This was the introduction. Sorry if it was a bit boring, but I had to give it as a kind of like framework of what we're discussing. And I think that it's very interesting that they have managed to do so in such a short period of time, because in the beginning, when the anti-gender movement appeared in North Macedonia, but also in the region, they started with this like anti-vaccine propaganda, and it was, or 5G, and we kind of like saw them as this like very strange, I don't know, very, I don't know, kind of like lunatics that are just like, who are these people? And just like in a couple of years, they have completely changed the political and the media landscape and everything, and hindered many democratic processes, I would say. And I would kind of like start the conversation with that, because I think that it was a very interesting period to develop, let's say, a media product in this period, especially one that is feminist or that's dealing with gender, as have the participants of this conversation. So as a starting question, I'm interested in exactly this, and I'm kind of like asking the same question to all of you. We can go in this order. I have a feeling that given the time when Misli Kritički started, but also Tampon Zona, Radio Mileva came a bit later, I have a feeling that this was a time when feminism was kind of like on the popular side, and this was because of these like girl boss movements. I don't know, Beyonce had like a feminist gigantic neon sign on her world tour. And this did a lot of damage, but that's like a completely different topic. But I feel like you started your platforms in this period when it was quite okay to say that you're a feminist or to deal with like women's rights or human rights. It was like even, I don't know, it was quite common, or it was not really opposed by the majority of people, especially men. They were like totally not interested in these topics. And then in a very short period of time, gender became like a very hot topic for like random people to discuss, and as I said, to use like this like fake news or disinformation, etc. So I'm interested in how come you made gender, women's rights the focal point of Tampon Zona and Misli Kritički. Was this something intuitive or like a conscious process? And then for Rumena, that started Radio Mileva in the peak of the anti-gender movement, whether this is something that kind of like sparked the idea of creating such a media space, or the motivation was found elsewhere. Thank you for your patience of this long introduction. I will be much more silent now.
Well, I think that's an interesting point of view that you said that you thought that feminism was like more popular before, like more, I don't know, easily approached, not as now. I think that actually it was not really popular to say that you're a feminist now or 5 years ago when I started Kritički. I think it's like pretty similar, but I just see the big shift in like the rise of far-right movement, not just like in our countries, but in Europe as well. And that's what I saw on social media actually, and those trends, I think that started like a few years ago, and some of those trends like seemed really not as dangerous as they are now. For example, I don't know, the rise of men on podcasts that are saying what women should or shouldn't do, and the rise of thread wives content, especially in USA. I think that now that seems as regular content, but a few years ago it wasn't. So I think the shift is there, but I don't think that like being a feminist was like okay to say now or before. Like from my perspective, I think it's now also like something that people don't really like or admire, and that sometimes people say, I don't know if you heard that, but she's a feminist, but she's okay. Like when you're a feminist, that means something bad, but she's like okay. So they need to justify it in some way. So yeah, and why is like feminism the main point of my page? I'm not sure, because I feel like I'm so deep into these topics now that when people like ask me that question, I'm like, what should be the focus of my page? Of course, I'm going to talk about women and everything that's going on now. I see it like when you learn some of these things, you see those patterns in everyday life. You see them all the time, and I just think to myself, what else could be the point of my page if not like, I mean, the life of half of Earth that goes through this every day. So yeah, I think like it's from my point of view, it's natural that these topics are like dear to my heart.
Well, first of all, hello everybody. It's really great honor to be with you today, and I'm really excited because I follow all of your work all the time, and we don't have the occasion to see each other, so it's really great to be on stage with you today. And yes, I have to agree with Nina. I think that when I started Tampon Zona, that was like 3-4 years ago, this kind of participants in anti-gender movement, they were something mystique, strange, they were like part of some secret society, and we weren't so afraid of them, you know, they were like something really light and banal, I think. And just like you said, Kalia, in just few years, we are witnessing this high switch where they are infecting our lives deeply. And when it comes to feminism, when I started, feminism was something like, I have to use the word trendy, you know, because before Tampon Zona, I have worked in some other media formats and some bigger media houses. And it was the thing, you know, to produce a content that is women-related, that is empowering for women and stuff. But I felt some limits there, because that content that they want something that isn't political. You know, they think that feminism is talking about, I don't know, as you mentioned, girl boss phenomenon and stuff like that. But I realized that feminism must be political, and then I decided to start Tampon Zona on my own terms and to do it the way I think should be. And yes, this moment, I don't know, when it comes to Serbia, it has a very fertile field for, you know, for these kind of movements. They are new and they are mixing with some grassroots that we have and some patriarchy patterns that are deeply in our culture. So I think that now we are witnessing some mixture of that, which is very, very, it can really affect our lives. And if you ask me what is a tool to fight this, I don't know, it's really strange and we are still coping with that. I must say that I can see much hate comments now, these days, on Tampon Zona that it was when I started it. And as Nina mentioned, I think the big thing and the big trouble is all of this content that they produce. We have this Red Pill podcast that started in the USA, but we have all local versions of it now. And when it comes to Serbia, it's really desperate to see these young men hosting these podcasts and talking about these sexist and misogynistic practices. So I told Rumena a few minutes before that Serbian Orthodox Church just started its own podcast today. So yeah. And the first episode is about colored revolution happening in Serbia. So they have, like, you know, I think that the big change happened when, with the Me Too movement globally, and we all have these local versions. We had a lot of speaking ups from women in different fields in Serbia, and that was really inspiring and empowering and stuff. And then we used media to produce these stories, to support women, and it was really a great moment. But now we have all these people from the other side using the same tools to tell their stories and their versions of truth, which are very false and dangerous. Yeah, that will be it for now.
Thank you also, Kalia, for the wonderful introduction, and I'm very happy to be with all of you on stage. As Iva said, we know each other, but we don't get to be together so often, so it's a great opportunity. I think, Kalia, it's interesting that you say that we started the Radio Mileva podcast in the peak of the anti-gender movement. But it was an organic continuation of other things that were happening here much before that. And you mentioned the Me Too movement throughout the Balkans, but before that, we had a feminist festival here, Prvo Pažensko, which did very, very well. And it defied those ideas of feminism as something that can be used for capitalistic purposes, which is one of the reasons we have, I think, the problem now is that a lot of these words that we used were emptied of meaning by the neoliberals that used them for their own financial gain. And we didn't see that coming, I think, when we began, because we were all kind of like, oh, you know, it should be popular, whatever the case, feminism should be popular. It doesn't matter if, you know, it's some stupid pop star or, you know, a businesswoman or some kind of a product that just wants to, you know, do pinkwashing or something like that. We were just very happy to be included, and we failed to see the, I think, the danger in all of that, where a lot of that meaning was emptied. And it doesn't just go for feminism; it also goes for climate change and other, I think, other movements that were ideological in their purpose. And are still ideological. I think they were used against themselves, especially because of the language. And I think language is really important in how, and we all somehow deal with language, of course, because we speak, we have podcasts, etc. But when we began, it was organic. I think we started the Firstborn Festival, Firstborn Girl Festival, or Prvo Pažensko, was doing really wonderful programs, and then just kind of organically we started doing Pitch, which was a women's storytelling event. And from there, we also had something like a radio show that we would do every once in a while. And Iva actually was you were a guest, yeah, in that show, because you did this wonderful documentary about the selective abortions in Montenegro. And so that's how I found out about Iva, and I had her in my show. And I found that even though people were maybe not listening that much, we didn't care. It was kind of guerrilla. We weren't really getting paid for any of that. It was just kind of, we just wanted to do it. Then, we started getting some funding, and then of course, the same people who are really getting paid to spread hate were using this little funding against us. Basically, like any kind of abuser, their tactics are just of the typical abuser in a personal relationship. So we just I don't know. I did like 10 years of Pitch with like 3 or 4 events every year. It became very tiresome, but it became also extremely popular. And I'm saying tiresome because you have to ask all these women to come on stage and tell a story. And there's not that many women who can also be on stage and be comfortable with being on stage and also be a storyteller and do it in front of 1,000 people, which we did. And so it's not easy. But it became extremely popular, which showed me that there was a strong need for people to talk about this, especially for women and some men. And so mostly from the LGBT, or mostly homosexual men actually, were supporting us, or still are. But it goes the same with culture, because I'm a writer, and so all my, 99% of my readers are women, and there will be 2 men who will very frequently give me their books. How surprising. Or tell me something about how I should write or whatever. At the end of every reading, there's one guy who first raises his hand, and
there's always this one.
He's the mansplainer. It just happened to me yesterday in Tirana. So
don't raise hand if you are that one today.
Sorry?
Don't raise hand if you are that one today.
I don't think, you'll be severely punished. But but it was funny yesterday because no one wanted to translate what the guy was saying. Everyone knew what was happening, even though it was not a feminist thing. But I think there's a lot of awareness. It's just the women started rolling their eyes in the audience, and then the moderator, she just didn't want to translate. And then he stopped. I mean, he just went on some kind of rant, and then it was over. I don't even know what he said. I can imagine. But, I'm saying this because it's a very long introduction to what I want to say, but I want to say that there was then, we also did the Me Too. We were Sega Kažuvam. I think we were first in the Balkans that opened up this trend of the Balkan versions of the Yugoslav regional versions of Me Too. And we saw that there was a need, and people really liked it. They responded very well to it, and there was very little backlash. And so Radio Mileva was just a continuation of that, because it's just 3 of us, we're friends, and we're all somehow activists and feminists in feminism, either through society or through art, or we're educators. A lot of us, we work at universities, etc. And so we just thought, okay, maybe it's time that we actually, because there's so many podcasters, men, why don't we do this, because we talk about these things anyway. And it was very organic. And then the problems come after that, when you see that the other side is actually very organized. And once you hit that wall of incredible organization that spreads hate, you really don't know. This is why I really want to talk about this also. I don't know what kind of mechanisms we should have, because it goes against all the mechanisms that I think of are all against my ethics, and even feminist ethics. But I don't know, should we be aggressive? I have no idea. So yeah, this is how it started. We're seeing that it has very good, we get a lot of hate comments, just the regular ones that are based on how we look. They love to call us grandmas. But then it's just but it doesn't matter, because also we think about the bad comment, and we forget about the thousand or I don't know, thousands of likes and whatever people that are telling us. We just focus on that one idiot who said something like that. And so I think that we have the opportunity to do all of these things. I think we're less of an aggressive in terms of that. I don't think we're that aggressive yet. I think the aggression is coming from the States. But it's how to stop that, or talk about some kind of, talk about the good things in terms of what we're showing and what we're giving, and I think it's a lot, and I think that with the two of you as well.
Okay, I have too many sub-questions, and thank you all for the kind of like short introductions. I will try to kind of like combine all of it in my next question, but actually it's not one question. Anyhow, I want to first start off by saying that I think that oftentimes we get kind of like disillusioned especially when we exist in the digital space, and it really feels overwhelming how big and powerful the anti-gender movement, not just the anti-gender movement, but all of the kind of like it's not domino effect, but I don't know, it can be domino effects that they already have done in the public discourse, and how, I don't know, how major that discourse feels as opposed to what we are working on. And it feels overwhelming, and sometimes it feels like what we do is kind of like too small or marginal or even unsuccessful. But I think that we always kind of like tend to forget that we are dealing and working in a region that the landscape is already conservative, so it's very easy to plant the seeds of such ideas, and we are trying to kind of like introduce something different or new or progressive and kind of like make a disruption. And when you're trying to make a disruption, it always comes with this price. So I think it's kind of like something that people need to kind of like all the time tell themselves again and again, and us amongst each other, because we tend to forget, and you're like, oh, I give up, this is a war. But that was just a comment.
Also we behave on the internet like how maybe you behave in a dark alley, where you cannot really be attacked in that space. Yeah, they say those hurtful things, but it's not like the physical. We take it as also being like it's dangerous. It is, of course, but also we forget everything else, which is, yes, look at where we are, what you were saying. Look at this milieu of patriarchy. I think you're all doing extremely well, especially the two of you. And you too, Kalia.
Oh,
I'm always
you,
spreading
Rumena.
Optimism. But yeah, you run a feminist, you run a feminist platform for 7 years, and it's taken over so much of the feminist discourse in such a positive way. I don't see something like where we should complain about that.
Okay, so we're done, right?
I think that this changing experience between each other, it's really precious, because I was talking to Nina earlier. You don't have who you're going to call for advice. No one has ever done this before. It's something that is happening now, and it's really, the thing is in this moment. We don't have, so this changing of experiences and stuff, it's really precious. I always feel better after speaking to Nina about some things that we are both experiencing, yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. I find also historical archives to be of big help, because very similar things were happening in the 70s, let's say, when you kind of I don't know, analyze what was happening in the feminist movement. And the anti-gender movement actually kind of started then, and now it's just on steroids because of the digital opportunities. I want to kind of develop on something that I think Rumena mentioned, maybe Iva as well. I think that something that was made very successfully also by the anti-gender movement. I'm also kind of on steroids, anti-gender movement, but they have really done this very successfully, and I think it's something that it's really important to be mentioned on this stage, is that they have somehow also managed to do a lot of disruption in the progressive movements themselves, or media or digital creators, or whatever, or what have you, of that space, because they made this situation of, I don't know, dividing feminism in kind of like a good basket and bad basket. Like, this is too radical, but this is like for the good women and we support this. Or, you know, with like extreme marginalization of LGBTI people, especially trans people. And they have made these points of disruptions for other movements as well that should, you know, build coalitions in order to oppose the real threats that we are currently facing. So I'm really interested in whether and how you deal with this issue in your work, and whether, I don't know, you've thought about compromising on certain topics, or certain methods, or what language you should use, and wondering whether a certain topic will, you know, create a deeper polarization in your audience. This is something that I feel it's really important, because you have like a very wide following, especially of girls and women, and your media platforms are, I would say, even like commercial. They're very widely accepted. And whether you have kind of like considered if a certain topic would scare audiences away, and you kind of like marginalized certain topics because of this, or whether you're always like, you know, just like, this is important and I have to cover this, and I don't care like what the price is, let's say. And this is something that I also have noticed with Medusa, for example. We published something concerning, I don't know, motherhood, let's say, and we would gain like a lot of following by women from all kinds of, you know, political ideologies, because this is a topic that even, I don't know, right political movements don't really cover in a real way. You know, they don't really care about the actual lives of mothers. And so we would gain this huge following, and then 2 days later we would publish something, I don't know, about queer women, and then you see how people just leave the room. And of course this is not something that we would ever compromise on, but I'm really interested in hearing how you dwelled on these topics.
Well, actually, Iva and I talked about this today when we were driving to here. For me, it's really special that you said that you sometimes lose followers when you speak about those topics, because that happened to me actually a few days ago when I posted that article that I wrote for you as well, for Medusa, about women's sexuality, something like that, and I lost like 200 followers in a day, and I didn't know that was like taboo still or something like that, but I guess it is. And I don't know, I feel like when you talk about these topics, you're either, for people, you're either too much feminist or you're like not feminist at all, and that is just the way they see you. Because as Rumena said, like when you're right, something along the lines, when you're like right politician, or when you follow right content and so on, like for people it's easier to gather themselves, because it's easier when you hate. When you hate, it's like easier to, I don't know, make a community or something. But when you're like on this other side, I guess like sometimes it's harder for people, and they're like so much eager to criticize you and to find mistakes in your work. And I don't think that like none of us is perfect, and we don't know like everything, and everyone is still learning and so on. And so I think like for people, when you do something that they don't see it as feminist, like they're going to, I don't know, criticize you, but also they're going to look at you as too much like radical feminist and so on, and you can never like be perfect for them. So I think like there is no like perfect solution for that, because I don't think that our people are still like eager to learn a lot about feminism, and I think they just want to usually find some bad things to say about you, especially when you do something that still doesn't align with their values, especially if there's something that they're not comfortable with. Then it's like you're really bad at it, and that's it.
Yeah, I think you're gonna be a bad feminist either way, you know, and you should accept that. But when it comes to topics that we cover, yes, we have some topics that are, like you mentioned, motherhood or menopause, menstruation, something that reproductive rights. That are some topics that gather a lot of women and a lot of different women, and I think that's good because we should make this story broader and to make this mission acceptable to different kinds of profiles of women and stuff. But there are some topics that we can call radical, but that we don't make compromises. That we, for example, like the issue with pornography, and when it comes to episodes with LGBT people, yeah, I was talking to Nina earlier. The last episode of Tampon Zona is with one Croatian lesbian band, and the episode is great. The conversation is really, it's one of my favorites, but I lost like also 300 followers because of that. And the things that bothers me is that I cannot explain to myself how someone is supporting women's rights and some topics, and when it comes to these topics, you know, they just leave, and this is not for me, you know, because...
Which are also women's rights.
Yeah, it's the same package, you know, so it's not clear to me what happened there, but yeah, we have some kind of strategy where we do this balance between the episodes that are for broader audience, because we do these interviews with some celebrities, where we ask them some questions and some topics that they didn't have an opportunity to talk about, you know, for example, that media representation of women, of sexism in media and stuff like that. And on the other hand, we have these experts with some, call it radical topics that we cover. And what's interesting is that these episodes with these anonymous experts, where we deep dive into something deeper, when we look what is the time of listening between this episode with celebrities and these with anonymous experts are they spend more time listening to these episodes than celebrities, yes, which is very interesting that they want to stay when they give themselves opportunity to hear something. So yes, on one hand, the mission is to go broader, to reach, as you mentioned, girls, some young audience and stuff, but we are very careful, for example, when we make these experts and reels from episodes, we are very careful, we are what we are going to choose for this video and stuff like that, because we are now witnessing this you mentioned this rant vibe in media and this rant post and reels, which are, I think, now the main tool for all the media houses nowadays. And I think that's really a bad thing to let this rant and anger be our main fuel, which I think it is today.
I think the topics that are very difficult to tackle here are two, and I think it's maybe in other places as well. One of them is related to the church and or the Islamic faith community here. If you say something related to feminism and faith, the backlash is brutal, and it's the worst backlash. I think it's much worse than the manosphere. They attack in an organized manner. They have their priests that have some kind of, that are like influencer priests or whatever, and then they, popovi, you know, and then they, and that's why they have a podcast. You know, that's why they do these things. And I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen here as well. And then they you know exactly if someone from the church, and I'm only saying church because we haven't even dabbled in the Islamic community, because we're not from that community by birth, and also it's very much connected to national, to ethnicity. So then it would also be kind of, oh, you're mixing up also, you know, the Albanian population here, and then how dare you speak that? Like, it could get really, really complicated. And so you know, there's moments where I would really like to tackle that subject, but honestly, I'm scared. And they do a very good job of scaring you, because you know when something has happened, because suddenly you get like 30 messages, like requests, or you got, I don't know, 100 follows. Suddenly in like 15 minutes, everything blows up on your social media. And then you figure out, and then people start sending me screenshots, and then I see that it's some priest, be it Orthodox. There's also like this, some kind of Protestant guy somewhere in Eastern Macedonia. I forgot his name. And you know, like they will post, you know, they'll do a screenshot, and they will actually invite everyone from their herd to hate you systematically, and to actually send you hate messages, and that they would kill you, or that they would do stuff like that. They start really, really threatening. And that, I think, is scary, because there's a lot of people there who are maybe not even right in the head, and they know where we live and they know where we work. So for me, it became scary, because I wrote something about, you know, like the Orthodox Church organized an anti-women's, an anti-trans protest or something. So then I said something like, I don't know, something, I said they were ugly. Oh my God, like, and then they started, who is this woman who says that we are ugly, and you know, and then I realized, because they sent me this, and so I know that it's them. So I think they can be maniacally brutal. I think they can be actually very, very dangerous. And so this is something that I haven't tackled in terms of a topic. That was the first one, and I think the second one, where they can use everything against you, like this is where they throw out all their like weapons, is if you in any way address sexuality and children in that combination. They immediately start going into this narrative of pedophilia, and then everyone catches on to that, and this is what they've been doing also to the LGBT community systematically, and also this is very much related to, again, the issue of faith, because a lot of these people are these so-called, you know, like very religious people. And, you know, the irony is huge, bearing in mind what's been happening in like places like the Catholic Church and their connection to pedophilia. I think, you know, always, you know, when they start saying those things, you're like, okay, there's got to be some pedophiles in this group. But you can't really, they have an army. They have an army of
really
crazy people.
to see that they are organized on this level.
Yeah. So I'm not really ready for that. I think there was one moment many years ago when there was an article by a man who wrote about his sexuality as a child and as a gay man, and you know, the backlash that he got, it was so brutal, even though it was through his perspective. This society is not, they're not even ready for sex education, because of course they present sex education in schools, they're presenting it as grooming or things like that. You know, the same people who fondle little girls and write comments, you know, like prefer 15-year-old girls, are the same ones that are then, you know, talking about how we sexualize. You know, we know what's happening. It's brutally paradoxical. It's very violent. It's aggressive, and I think it has potential for real violence. So this is where I have to draw the line, even though I wouldn't want to.
Actually, same. I never or rarely talk about religion, and now I'm watching *Handmaid's Tale*, and I think it's a perfect example how people can weaponize religion, and I see a lot of parallels with our reality and with our society, but when I try to talk about it, I'm a bit scared because I don't know what they're going to do, and even among a lot of feminists, that's still like touchy subject, and I can just like bring it up and talk about it, not that easily, although I know like I have so many things to say about it, but I'm so scared just because of that backlash and what can I do, and actually I'm just scared of them like in physical spaces as well, not just digital.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up, because this is like super important in this context, especially that we're discussing right now. And also these paradoxes are, yeah, they're bizarre. Just a couple of days ago, I think, some of the actors here, together in coalition with the Union of Women of the ruling party, VMRO-DPMN, did a screening of the film What is a Woman by Matt Walsh, who is basically advocating against the idea that adolescence as such exists, that that children, girls are ready for marriage at 15 or something. The point I'm getting to is that this is really important, because while we are in this space of kind of like being legitimately afraid of dealing openly with certain topics, they are kind of like filling this empty space, and especially in the local communities. I know that this is happening in North Macedonia. I'm not sure about Serbia and Montenegro, but through the church they are organizing young people and giving them this, like, I don't know, non-formal education on gender relations, on abstinence, really like American scenario. And they're using them as even cultural spaces, because of course these are communities and towns that are emptied of content for young people and etc. And they're really like creating, they're kind of like creating the new order, I would say. And this is something that is really scary for me, and this is something that I also want to hear your thoughts on, because we can already see how there is the, let's say, more severe traditionalization, I don't know if this is a word, retraditionalization is a word, people, of girls and women. We can already see it. And when we are creating content for Medusa, I always have this thought, like, how do we reach these girls and women that are kind of like neutral in a way, by not, but a bit on the right, because now that is the majority of the people, and that is like the general discourse. Whether there is a way to create in a way that doesn't exclude them or shames them, but then can you do that without compromising on the way that you discuss certain topics? This is something that I really cannot, I'm not sure if we have methods for this yet, and I think this is really important, because many actors on the right side, as Rumena said in the beginning, claimed our terms and words and emptied them of political meaning, and now we're just kind of like losing people day by day. So how do you deal with this very scary reality of of your content maybe becoming very niche and invisible for the majority of people?
Well, I'm not sure, because I don't think that you can make someone like have feminist values. I think that most of us just can like continue what we are doing now, and then some women will join, some won't. I don't think that we can make them do that, and I don't think that we need to, like, have some, aggressive messaging or something like that. I don't talk, not that it's bad. I'm like, everyone has their own like ways to talk about these topics, and I support all of them, but I just don't think that they will like make them follow like these values. So I'm really not sure. For me, I think it's also important to like have even more communication with girls that are already here, because sometimes it can be a bit scary, and most of the time we just like focus ourselves of, oh, how are we going to like make more people think like about these values and think about these problems, but sometimes in the way we forgot like about people who are there, and that they also need like some kind of support. They also need some kind of connection with us. We also need like to stick together. So yeah, but for girls who are like going right, I'm not sure, because I see it now, younger girls. I see this like with, even in fashion now, I don't know if you notice, like we see the right movement is like rising even in like those little things. So I think it's like huge part of our society now, and I'm not sure how we as individuals can like shift that. So yeah, that's not positive answer, but
I must say, and First of all, thank you to Nina, because she introduced me to this kind of concept, which I like to use when it comes to young girls and reaching this kind of audience and making this audience broader. It's the concept of unlearning. I think it's really important in feminism, and when you try to reach out to some new girls, young girls, that maybe some classical feminist vocabulary is not really so, they are not so familiar with that, but when it comes to this unlearning, to make them unlearn some things, to make them, make these concepts familiar for them, which are already built in them by patriarchy. So I think that using this simple language and telling them why are they having internal misogyny or something like that, that can be really valuable for them. But also I must mention that the whole media space is missing one really important target group. And it's like, on one hand, we have this feminist content with these empowering messages, with liberating content and stuff like that. And on the other hand, we have this far-right anti-gender movement and this digital wave. And I think that the big gap here, we have all of these men, which are not, let's say, Andrew Tate driven and stuff like that. They're like agreeing with us in some private spaces, but publicly they're very silent. And I think that this is a great target group that someone should address. I said someone because I think that we shouldn't do this also, because we all have our target groups and our ways of creating content, but somehow I think that there is a whole gap in this big number of men who are like nodding their heads when they talk to us and when they talk to girls, but they are also smiling on misogynistic things and jokes and stuff like that. So I think that's a really big group that someone should address and make content for them. Because I think they should be louder, and we are missing that. So we have this polarization of these two islands, feminists and Andrew Tates.
Yes, I have this, it's a star. Where are the men? Yeah, I feel like just a short interruption, and then Rumena, back to you. But I feel like in the public discourse and in the digital world, there is this like very strong pressure that I feel, and I'm sure that all of you feel, like you should include men more. Yeah. Like, are men like illiterate? Can they like be included by themselves and by just like knowing that it's the ethical thing to do? So I'm also very strong on this point that men should find their own voice and resources in this struggle. But what I see in this landscape is that they are very severely and scarily neutral, which really pisses me off. So I'm not sure who are these people that will do this work, Iva, and I'm waiting for it for years now. And it's very disappointing. But I do agree that there is like this huge pool of allies, potential allies there, but I feel like at this point, and especially now with the discourse being more radically against progressive movements, thought, etc., that these neutral men will become even more neutral because they are not used to being in the spotlight like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that they're ready to give up their positions and privileges that maybe they're not even aware that they have, in this region at least. But yeah, this is very important. Thank you for bringing it up. And I'm sure Rumena has a lot to say on this topic as well.
Yeah. I think we need to remember that that these podcasters and this kind of discourse, the manosphere, whatever you want to call it, is catering to already traditional ideas that men have. And in such a way, it's very easy to manipulate men into loving these people. All they have to do is show them how to build muscles. And this is what they're doing. A lot of them are dealing with physical male health, and that's how they're seducing these boys into actually also gulping down all their other messages, which is something that their dad has told them, something that their grandpa told them, something that they heard in school, something that they read in the newspaper. It's not a new idea that's given to these boys. It's just the old ideas reiterated, but now by a new guy. And it's nothing different. It's just the form is a little bit different because now it's digital, it's on the internet. But it's what men have been doing for centuries. It's nothing new. Before that, they had the newspapers. Then before that, they had TV stations. Before that, they had, whatever, literature, whatever. They had everything. Now they also have the internet. They're not doing anything new. They're just saying all the old stuff. They're getting organized a lot easier than we are because they have centuries of methods to use against us. They knew how to burn us at the stake. So they know exactly what to do with us now as well. What we have is a much more difficult position because now we have to seduce all these girls and women into trusting us. And now it's expected of us to also do it to men. Sorry, I can't do that anymore. Men should step up. Now at least people are talking more about men's mental health and how they feel emasculated by this whole thing. And there are some good men out there. Not all men, right? But I agree that I'm tired and I don't think this is my job. And when they say, why don't you include me? It's like, it's very easy to say yes to your friend or to laugh at a misogynistic joke or to not condone any of your friends who've raped someone or who've attacked someone or someone who's abusing their wife. They don't even talk to their friends because they have a chumminess that we are now developing as girls. We're developing this sisterhood, and this is really threatening to them. And all the time, again, like Margaret Atwood said, they're afraid of being laughed at, and we're afraid of getting killed, right? But they're very scared that we will laugh at them, maybe, and say something, or they will make a mistake in front of us. This is another thing, and very frequently when I'm sitting with men, hetero men, they'll be like, oh, I'm scared, like if I say something in front of you. I'm like, I'm scared to walk on a street with someone passing me who looks like you. And still, it's like nothing, boink, it just kind of it doesn't even enter that head. I didn't want to say something like be even worse, but it doesn't go in there. It's because they don't want to listen. And for centuries, they didn't listen. There's the literature, if you look at it, because I'm, as a writer and someone who teaches literature, if you look at the literature, they have no idea what women thought, or when they try to write a dialogue with women, it's so stupid because it doesn't make any sense. So that's because they didn't know us. And so now, they still don't know us, but now they're afraid because we're together. And so, that's a big challenge, but I think we're also expecting too much of ourselves, again, to be a little bit more optimistic. 100 years ago, we couldn't be sitting on the stage, wearing pants or whatever, it would be impossible. We wouldn't have jobs or the opportunity to do anything, we would be imprisoned as wives and mothers and whatever, domestic slaves. And now it's not that. We have all these opportunities, but we're expecting more and more very quickly. I think that we need to find methods because they have methods in which they function. And I think we need to find those methods and we need to distribute them. So then when we talk, again, like when they attack us 2,000 people at once, there's a 5,000 woman army on the other side. I want to say something terrible, like if you literally tell them that they have a small penis, they go crazy. This is why Andrew Tate went to jail, because Greta Thunberg did this to him. I'm not saying that this is what we should do, but I am sort of saying that we should. But there could be methods like that women can maybe organize and just say, look, these are 5 ways to address someone or get him off the internet and something like that. I think we should make some kind of a rule book on how to battle incels on the internet.
Small applause. I think we have methods. That's why we're still here. But I also think that, again, asking maybe too much from ourselves, but what frightens me is that these movements that we talk about are so good at entering the physical spaces, whether they're gyms or whatever, and they're very good at politically mobilizing people and kind of like shaping their real lives. And I'm afraid that we are just like maybe staying in the digital too much or in the narrative too much. But also, I mean, this is something that we decided that we will work in this field. So it's not like, again, it's like, oh, we're not doing enough. But I'm always wondering in how we can kind of like bring our work more concretely in the actual space and lives of people, because the regression is happening. So this is something that we have to consider as well.
But you were saying because of what happened in Gyurcsa Petrov with Matt Walsh and that, that horrible movie that they were screening, and how do we get to those places? Again, all of those places are somehow run by men. And that's why it's so difficult for us to go into those spaces, because they run them, just like they ran everything before. One way to do it is what Serbian students did. They went physically. They went on bicycles, they went walking, they went to places, they saw these students and they spoke to these people who are brainwashed. That's one way to do it. But do we really want to educate all the time? I mean, are you tired of educating? That I'm really asking. Like, is this really what we want to do? Like, do we want to mobilize also physically when we also have those other things to do? I don't know.
It's the name of the conference. Engage, inspire, empower. So no, these are not questions that have concrete answers. So it's just, something that we are bouncing around, because the dilemmas are legit, and also it's not like, it's not something that one person can do or one organization or one group, and that's why it's very important for these spaces to be intertwined like this one here, because it's people that work on very diverse fields, etc., but they're all kind of like connected in what they're trying to do, and it's just like making our lives better in essence. So
yeah, and I must add that if we talk about these digital spaces, I'm always like media literacy, but I think really media literacy is the literacy of 21st century, and it shouldn't be some course or some conference and some stuff that it's peripheral. It should be, the main subject in every school, I think, and we are just, our eyes are closed, and our kids and young people they're just not, they don't know how to navigate this world. And earlier, Rumena mentioned that, yes, we had this NTV and magazines and all these spaces that men were in, but today, I think that before, at least, these kids were safe in their rooms, you know that your kid is in their room and that it's safe there, but now we have this space that isn't just digital space, it's really equally important as the physical space today, I think. So I think that some education on systemical level, it's really a must, and we are missing that for years. We are deeply late for that, I think.
Nina, did you want to add something? I
No.
saw you a couple of times.
Yeah, but I forgot most of the things I wanted to say. But yeah, I agree with both of them, and I think what Rumena said, like, we don't want to just educate all the time. I feel like sometimes we also need to have like a rest time or to hang out with our girlfriends and so on. And those are also like political things, if you look at it that way. Those are also like when women gather, that's something, especially like for me, when I try to organize things like that, that's also like political thing, but it's also something that helped me rest and rebuild myself after all of these that we talk about. So I think it's also important to like privately, not just professionally, have these spaces where you feel safe, especially with other women.
I completely agree, and on this note, I would maybe ask you for kind of like wrapping up this very wide discussion of, well, Nina already mentioned, but maybe what are the things right now that help you gain perspective or vision, or where you draw inspiration or hope, and I don't know, how do you keep going in this day and age?
For me, like, it's a really short answer, usually just like other women in my life, and that's it.
Things like this, certainly, and just networking and changing experience between each other, but also when it comes to episodes and Tamponzona podcast, I think that this micro impact that every episode had, you know, when you get a comment that some woman changed something in her life just because she listened to some episodes and she learned something, or she has some kind of awakening in her head. I think that's really precious to me. You know, these small aha moments in just ordinary women's lives. That's really a big thing for me. And I just started to make some notes about the impacts after every episode, because I usually forgot these things. You know, some nice testimonials, comments and stuff. And I'm now making some kind of archive of these highlights and things that I get that are really precious moments, you know, when some women get some inspiration to be a game changer in her small city or school or university or something like that. That's a really big thing for me. So it's kind of fuel that keeps me going, yeah.
I think that, this is like, I think I've seen it, Nina, at Misli Kritički, this concept of micro-feminism or something like that, right? Yeah, you did it together. No, I think that this is like, this is a very important lesson, because I think it goes for any kind of political engagement, that you always measure it by micro movement, and if you lack this perspective, you would always get depressed by reality. So I think that these micro steps and micro wins, and just like the connection and community you're building, however small it is really just like the only thing that matters at the end of the day, and how we, you know, how we cross bridges when we get to them. Rumena?
Mine is also short. I'm just angry, and so it's not fair.
We can see that.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm angry. It's not fair. There's a lot of injustice. I think we should fix it, and that's what drives me. Among the fact that, you know, I have a community that makes me also not feel crazy. That all of this stuff, like, it's been done for centuries, like this gaslighting that what we're feeling is not true, and now I don't have that anymore. And also, it's really beautiful to be liberated from many of those feelings, and to enjoy to enjoy sisterhood on so many levels. But also, I'm angry. So, and I think that's good.
This was a very poetic answer. What was that quote by Agnes Varda, I think? I tried to be a joyful feminist, but I was very angry. Yeah. On that note, I have no further questions. Thank you for joining me in this lovely discussion. I hope that our small audience was enjoying as well. I'm not sure if you should eat now, but I'm sure that we can squeeze in a question. Or Angel, yes, yes. I was searching for you for the approval of the men for questions. Yes, if we have by this lovely man. Okay, if there is a question, comment, or something like that from the audience, we are happy to answer it.
Or comments, if you want to comment something.
It feels very strange that we are so high. I'm sure that that's why we are not...
Also, the men can't say anything after what we did, so, you know, like, they can't ask the question first. You're allowed to.
Going once, going twice. Okay, you're free to eat. Thank you for listening. Ciao.